welcome to Justification. My name is Linwood Jackson Jr. and I will be your host as we take a journey, a very intricate trip through this term called justification. Now we may know what it means, but our task is to look at it from the perspective of the Bible. The mind of the Bible as opposed to the mind of our traditional thought or to the mind of our automatic thought of what this word may be or mean or translate to be defined as. And coming at it from two different perspectives, the perspective of the Hebrew and the perspective of the Greek. Where in the Hebrew you can think of justification as meaning to judge or as meaning to dispute, meaning to correct, or meaning to render a thing in a correct stance or status. In the Greek sense, you can think of it as also to render, but also to be free, to liberate, to be just, or to be, you could think of it as, again, just plain liberty. So if we can put these two things together, the Hebrew and the Greek definition of this term justification, we come to a very interesting point of justification meaning to chasten or to render clean, to chasten through judgment for rendering clean for the purpose of liberating or for the purpose of liberty. This is what justification means. Justification means to liberate through a process or a type of judgment or chastening. And that's key. That's very key, because the key component to justification, there is an end. There is an end to justification. So there is an end, there is a beginning, and there is a middle point. Each one of these we will go through. And each one of these are just as crucial to this term called justification as they are individually. Individually, they do mean a thing, but put them together and we have this course of learning to liberate us through chastening. And this gets deep into the philosophy that is within the Bible, because our conversation, and I'm going to say this hour, I'm going to say this hour, I'm going to say this we, I'm going to say this us. And it's not in reference to the human being, to us naturally as biological creatures. It is in reference, as it is in reference within the Bible, to the devotional conversation. This us, this we, this our, it is in reference to the devotional conversation and the devotional conversation's conscience. So this us that I'm referencing, once we begin coming together to commune about what is within the Bible, it goes beyond us as human beings and enters into a realm of devotional creatures. We are devotional creatures when we open up the Bible first. We're devotional creatures because we are innately spiritually minded or philosophical. Thought, feeling, emotion, or neurology dictates the fact that we are more than human beings. So when we do enter into the Bible, we are not simply just entering into a book, a historical book. We are entering into a book of a philosophy that translates the realm of the individual that's entered into it. So while we are human beings reading this book, we have to be mindful of the fact that what is to be edified is our devotional conscience, or our religious belief. That is the primary objective of what is within the Bible, because it is our religious belief, or it is our spiritual mind, or it is our philosophical belief that dictates how we behave in the natural world. We may not realize it or not, but these beliefs that we have that are devotional, they dictate how we react to one another. They dictate how we react to ourselves. They dictate to how we react to stresses in our environment. They dictate to how we translate stress and translate the actions, thoughts, behaviors, and feelings of one another. So when we go through the Bible and we're going through the counsels that are in it, yes, it is for us as natural individuals, but it is also, we have to be mindful of the fact that we have a body that we cannot see that is within. We have an essence. We have an essence that is within that we cannot see. That essence has an intelligence. And that intelligence has a craving, just like our natural body has a craving for food. We have to feed that intelligence with what it is born for. And that's what the essence of justification is. And so there is also a wrong that can take place when it comes to justification. In the book of Job, this wrong is brought out and articulated. In the book of Job, chapter 9 and verse 20. In the book of Job, chapter 9 and verse 20, we read, "If I justify myself, mine own mouth shall condemn me." If I justify myself, my own mouth shall condemn me. And the more that we get into this term justification, is the more that I would like you to take note of its context. Because this term, the more that I justify myself, it can help us to understand just what we are supposed to be investigating. So the context that this is used in is that to make oneself light or free of condemnation. To justify oneself is to say that there is nothing wrong with self. And the self, again, this us, we, both natural and devotional, it is in reference to the body of our belief, our faith's intellect. When we think about justification, we have to think about it as in liberating self from self. It is a not so good practice to take what we believe and to hold it as is delight, in a negative sense, as is pride. There is positive pride, there is negative pride. There is a pride that leads to humility, and there is a pride that rises up above what humility is. The way that the term justification goes, it can go on both ends. When we think about justifying ourselves, we have to think about it in the context of doing something or pretending or acting as if we are something, or believing as if we are something, to make it appear that we are without fault, that we have gone through that process of chastening for the liberty, and so now we've claimed the status. And that claiming of the status, that positive pride, that negative pride, it can show two distinct things. It can show a conversation as serving an interest based on itself, or it could show an interest serving what is not of itself. Meaning that within the Bible, there is a frame of reference to a service to words. Now, John 15, verse 1 and 2. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now you are clean by the word that I have spoken. So you have in the book of Job confessing something that is absolutely real. If I justify my own self, I am wrong. Why? Because you are clean by what I have spoken to you. There's that flip. That word clean and that word justify, it means the very same thing. It's just the context. And the context is that what is spoken, now there is nothing spoken, it is what is written. What is written is to go, once exercised, into a portal of what can be heard, not through our literal ears, but through the ears within our mind. What is heard within the ears within our mind and is to be translated, in our daily life, on a daily basis. This is what is to clean. So if I justify myself, meaning if I take up an action, if I take up a belief, if I take up a notion, justifying my belief or justifying my action or justifying my status to whatever divine I imagine is observing it, if I am going about as if I have gone through the process of justification, I am wrong. Why? Because I am only just, I am only clean through what I have heard. This is a concept that actually got that man crucified. Because here you have a belief, a general belief, 100% within the Bible, that one must complete according to the maintenance set up by Moses, which is continued to this day. That through deeds, commandments, traditions, theories, doctrines, rituals, baptisms, and all other holy days highlighting and holy actions highlighting my justness, that I am justified. But within the same Bible is a context that is contrary to that. Within the Bible is a context that says, no, you, my friend, can only claim justification if what you have heard makes you clean. So we have two very different philosophies within the same Bible. Two very different trains of thought within the same Bible. The one thought is that yes, I can justify myself and be well. I can do and be well. I can maintain routine, and through the maintenance of that routine, I can be well. I will be fine. I am taken care of. On the other hand, it's a completely different point of view where you are clean and you maintain your cleanliness through what has been spoken. So the real question that we have to get at in terms of justification, along with its process, is what is spoken? What has been spoken? Looking at the book of Proverbs. Looking at the book of Proverbs, because this is where we get into how we understand what has been spoken. Now, we think that what has been spoken is what has been passed down to us from theologians past and present. We think that that's what has been spoken. Because it is written, the Lord will do nothing but speak through his prophets. Book of Proverbs, verse 23 and 19. Book of Proverbs, verse 23 and 19. Book of Proverbs, chapter 23 and verse 19. Proverbs chapter 23 and verse 19 says in that very first part, A, of this verse, hear thou my son, and be wise, and guide thine heart in the way. Our responsibility is to our faith's intellect. Our responsibility is not to how we get to where we need to get intellectually and spiritually. We can't do anything about that. From a physical standpoint, from a hands-on standpoint, from a this is what I'm going to do and that this is what I'm going to be. We control the growth of our devotional conversation just as much as we control the growth of our own body. Who can control the growth of their own body? Who can control the growth of their own devotional conversation? Yet this is what we do. This is the other aspect of proclaiming justification that we do. We are controlling the body of our faith by routines and by traditions and by thoughts and by commandments and by periods. And we are thinking that we are just for doing so. But the Bible is giving us something different. The Bible is giving us within the same book a contrary point of view. And we will understand which is the right point of view, because the Bible will not leave us to guess. A contrary point of view to where the responsibility of guiding, that is our responsibility. And guiding in the way. And so we're faced with an option. Is the way justifying self? Or is the way in obtaining justification through what is heard or spoken or written? Our responsibility is to guide our conversation in a way where it can understand that this is the direction it needs to be in order to receive what the Bible's mind is saying it will receive due to it being in that direction. That's the direction that we need to be in. And how in the book of Psalms? The book of Psalms gives us that how. In the book of Psalms, Psalms 119, verses 15 and 16. Psalms 119 verses 15 and 16 reads, I will meditate in thy precepts and have respect unto thy ways. I will delight myself in thy statutes. I will not forget thy word. There is our answer. We are told to guide our conversation in the way, and that guidance, we may have an idea of what that guidance is. We may believe that the direction that we are currently passing through, the routines, the tradition, the belief, the stimulus that we apply to our faith in order to have it believe that it is a living body. We may believe that that is that route. But the Bible is telling us something key. The Bible is telling us an entrance and is giving us the key for that entrance into what it terms, quote unquote, the way. The one is meditate. Meditate on thy precepts. For what? Respect unto thy ways. Again, delighting self in what? His statutes. For what? The purpose of not forgetting singular, not words, but thy word. Now just know we heard John 15. You are clean through the word that I have spoken unto you. But now we hear in the book of Psalms, I will delight myself in your statutes so that I will not forget your word. Our responsibility is to meditate on these very words within the Bible so that we can, one, know that singular word, which is that singular counsel, to understand the direction our faith is supposed to be in. That singular word or counsel is through that guidance by way of meditation on these words. Not simply just meditating in a book. We're meditating as we take these things that we read within this book and then apply them in our daily lives, in situations on a daily basis, compelling our mind into action, remembering the thoughts and feelings that are expressed in what we're ever reading, the sentiments of what we have read, and bringing them into daily life and exercising them. This is how we understand the way or the course or the philosophy that the Bible is trying to get us into. So it's active. The Bible is calling for an active relationship with us. And this is the difference. The inactive relationship is one that relies on former thought, former belief, and also stimulus through a consistent flow of theory and dictation of commandments and routine, policies. Presently, the Bible is giving us another way that we should think about carrying on our devotional conversation. And that is through intricately handling it. Handling it not in the sense of handling it to chasten it, handling it to shape it. We're not supposed to shape it. We are supposed to guide it. And we are guiding it through meditating on anything that is found within the Bible. Any sentence, any half of a sentence. Exercising what we find and then putting them into practice on a daily basis is a routine that will bring us to an understanding of just what the Bible wants us to go through. And that us, again, of course, as human beings, but that us being devotional, our devotional mind. Our devotional mind is to go through a change. That word change can be thought of as redemption. Redemption means change. This is a theme within the Bible, and it is a theme that we will, of course, get into. And which is something that also we should not forget. Because when it comes to justification, as we reviewed earlier, this change or this redemption is supposed to be a form of liberty. So we have to think. We have to think about what the Bible is getting at with this term justification. Because it's telling us that we need to be liberated from something. And that should arouse thought. And this is an interesting thought, no? This is an interesting thought. Because thus far we've seen two perspectives within the same book. We've seen two manners of devotion within the same book. And we've seen arguments, not in full, of course. We will take our time. But we've seen arguments, if you will, of both, for both. And yet the Bible leans in a certain way to a form or practice that is well, not just for our human being, but for also our faith's intellect, for our devotional conscience. What I want you to think about for this week, what I want you to think about at this time, is liberty, the liberty of your faith's conscience. I want you to think about your faith's conscience in a way of its freedom to honor its belief. Does your faith honor its belief based on what it knows through handling the words of the Bible? Or does it believe simply to believe? Or does it believe simply because something was given to it or without personal investigation? Or what is the status of the liberty of your faith? Because the Bible is calling for us to be liberated from something. And Paul, to the Corinthians, actually points out something very crucial to what that liberation is in reference to the book of Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 29. After going through a bit of a long explanation there in this chapter, a long lesson that Paul gives, skipping to part B of that verse in verse 29. 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 29, part B. Paul says, "For why is my liberty judged of another man's conscience?" So this one verse, not taking it out of context, this one verse, this one section, part B of this verse, it touches on the controversy that this term justification implies. Justification implies cleanliness, but the cleanliness isn't physical. The cleanliness is not physical. There is no such thing as being physically clean if we're going to believe John 4:24 that God is spirit. So there's nothing that you can do, there's nothing that I can do that can physically allow the type of cleanliness to what is spirit. The cleanliness has to go beyond what is natural and has to dig further into what is within. The inward person, or the essence of our devotional character, or as Paul says in the book of Ephesians chapter 4, the spirit of our mind. This is what has to be clean. This is why only what you have heard can clean this, because the Bible is mental. Everything here is mental. This is mental, this is philosophical. This is not physical. We can translate it to be physical, but that's the other side. The other side is translating it into something physical, and this is where Job says, if I justify myself, I am wrong. That physical translation is the justification of self, which is a negative connotation to the term justification, but the positive connotation in a positive or in a right scheme is that cleanliness is to occur within, and not necessarily within the human being. Primarily or firstly within the devotional conscience. Our faith is not to be dictated by the conscience. Our faith's intellect is not to be led or guided by the scheme, by the stimulus of another's conscience. So there's an awakening that we have to go through to realize that our conversation is personal, just as our body is personal. And that we have to take care of it just like we take care of our natural physical body. And this is all the Bible wants us to think on how we will maintain our natural body and go through all kind of lengths to make sure that it is well. We never had a mind. We never raised a hand to say, I accept life. Nobody can remember doing this. But we will guard this body as if we did raise our hand and say, I will and I do to life. We need to take the same care that we have for our body and give it to the body of our faith. We cannot continue to entrust the body of our faith to practitioners and to antibiotics, to prescriptions that continually leave us leaving that practitioner and going to another practitioner, leaving that practitioner and going to another practitioner, leaving that practitioner and going to another practitioner. The Bible is saying that this is ridiculous. And it's ridiculous for the purpose of you being a human being, having a brain, and also having a personal experience that you're going through. This personal experience is to be guided by what is within. No one, no other conscience. And it's funny because in any other setting, we don't want our conscience told what to do. We don't want to be told what to do. But when it comes to certain things, we just give. We just give it without thought. Well, the Bible is saying to stop. The Bible is saying to stop giving yourself. We call this promiscuity. Stop giving yourself your devotional conscience. Stop giving your devotional conscience. Retain its value. Retain knowledge of it. Build up its character and strengthen it through exercising what is heard, what is written on a daily basis. Gain a personal relationship with these words because these are the words inspired by the living God. These are the words inspired by that philosophy connoting justification. Our responsibility is to guide, not handle the conversation. Should we put into play what we learn and dissect? Even simple things, little things, the living God will handle the rest. Life will take care of it. We have to trust our conversation to this, the same way we trust our heart to beat every day that we wake up. So put that into practice this week. Keep this in your mind to exercise what you find in the Bible personally. Until next time.